Hey, y'all, this is Mike, my brother Chuck, and we continue to work our way through the Gospel of John. Today we're in John chapter 18, where Judas betrays Jesus and Peter denies him, and he stands before uh, the high priests and Pilate on trial. But before we get there, Chuck has got the story for the week.
All right. So we spent a lot of time in our probably teenage years and young adult years in the South. But we were military brats, so we were very metropolitan. And that's the best way
Not
to put it.
metrosexual, metropolitan.
Yeah. Uh, Anyways, so we're at a truck stop. It's Georgia, Alabama, or somewhere like that, and we're walking around. We're bored. We don't have anything to do while everybody's in the bathroom, and so Mike comes to the chewing tobacco, and he puts on his best redneck accent, and he said, "Hey, y'all want some Red Man?" And he thought I was standing behind him, but no, a big old redneck with his hands stuffed in his boots said, "Yeah, I think I will get me some Red Man." And Mike's turning 30 shades of red. Oh, it was so funny. So,
Oh, man.
yeah.
All right. Well, you just gave me my story for next week.
Okay. All
All
right.
right, so let's jump in here. John chapter 18. I'm going to read 1 through 11.
All right.
When Jesus had spoken these words, he went forth with his disciples over the ravine of the Kidron, where there was a garden in which he entered with his disciples. Now, Judas also, who was betraying him, knew the place, for Jesus had often met there with his disciples. Judas then, having received the Roman cohort and officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. So Jesus, knowing all things that were coming upon him, went forth and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" And they answered him, "Jesus the Nazarene." He said to them, "I am he." Also, Judas who was betraying was standing with them. So when he said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Therefore he again asked them, "Whom do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these go their way. To fulfill the word which he spoke, of those whom you gave me, I have lost not one." Simon Peter then, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's slave and cut off his ear. And the slave's name was Malchus. So Jesus said to Peter, "Put the sword into the sheath. The cup that the Father has given me, shall I not drink it?"
All right. So, why did the Pharisees need somebody else to betray Jesus?
Yeah, the reason I asked this question is because it used to confuse me. I'm thinking the Pharisees were constantly getting into it with Jesus. They could have arrested him at any time. Why do they need an inside man to arrest him? And the reason is that they didn't want to do it in front of the public. By this time, Jesus' popularity was way up there, and so they feared the people rioting because if they arrested him in public. So they needed an inside man who knew where Jesus was at night so that they could go under cover of darkness and do this privately on the sly. And that's
Mm,
where Judas comes in.
yeah. It's very interesting that these guys are completely in step with prophecy when they got nefarious intentions,
Yeah,
and they're right in step with
yeah.
prophecy. So,
Even the high priest prophesied. So it's interesting that he knew that Judas was going to betray him, but he didn't change his location. He went to a place where they had gone often.
mm.
So it says there that Jesus knew all things that were coming upon him. Why does John make that a point?
I think to demonstrate that Jesus did all of this voluntarily. It was not a mistake. It was not a fluke. If I can put it this way, Jesus wasn't even a victim. He marched to the cross knowing full well how it would happen and why it was happening. A lot of times we get a little bit confused and make Jesus out to be the victim. He tells Pilate, and we'll read it later, you would have no authority over me unless it was given to you from above. God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the Father, complete control and right in step with the scriptures. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Total control.
Yeah. So why did the arresting party draw back? And I think this is funny. Why did they draw back and fall on the ground? I think of the Keystone Caps at this point, you know.
I hadn't thought of that. The Greek there is ego eimi, which is literally I am, the same word. In the English version, they add the he, but you'll notice it's italicized. So what he said was, I am, and that harkens back to what the Lord told Moses to say when he said, who shall I say send me? I am that I am. So that's a powerful name. And like you said, whether the guys knew it or not, they were subject to that, to the power of God, right?
And you would think they would get the clue phone at this point, you know, hey, the clue phone is for you, you know. They're still not getting it.
Yeah,
so
yeah. So Peter hacks a guy's ear off. I love Peter. was he totally out of line to do that, you think?
I feel sorry for Peter because, you know, earlier on, Jesus says, hey, I told you to not take anything, but now I'm telling, take a sword. And the knuckleheads say, here's two. That's enough, you know. And so if I were Peter, I would be like totally confused at this point. What? So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's instinctive and to his credit that he defends Jesus, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that he just didn't get the whole picture that Jesus was in control and this was part of the plan, right?
But you know that slave was quick because he just got his ear. Man, that guy's quick. He's good.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
And in the other gospels, it says that Jesus healed the guy's ear, but apparently that didn't have any impact on the arresting party, right?
A clue phone, it's for you. Yeah.
All right, we're going to 12 through 24. So the Roman cohort and the commander and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him, and they led him to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Now, Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews that it was expedient for one man to die on behalf of the people. Simon Peter was following Jesus, and so was another disciple. Now, that disciple was known to the high priest, and he entered with Jesus into the court of the high priest. But Peter was standing at the door outside. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the doorkeeper and brought Peter in. Then the slave girl who kept the door said to Peter, you are not also one of this man's disciples, are you? And he said, I am not. Now the slaves and the officers who were standing there, having made a charcoal fire, for it was cold, and they were warming themselves, said to Peter also with them, standing and warming himself. And the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. And Jesus answered and said, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in the synagogue and the temple, where all the Jews come together, and I spoke nothing in secret. Why do you question me? Question those who have heard what I spoke to them. They know what I said. When he said this, one of the officers standing nearby struck Jesus, saying, is that the way you answer the high priest? Jesus answered him, if I have spoken wrongly, testify of the wrong, but if rightly, why do you strike me? So Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest.
All right. So the question is, how in the world could Peter lose his nerve with a little bitty servant girl after challenging a whole mob by himself with a sword? What's happening here?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that confusion. He had his nerve in the garden, and he exercised it and cut off the guy's ear, and Jesus gently rebukes him. So now he's totally confused,
Yeah.
and he's off off balance, right? So I'm not sure what he's thinking at this point, but he has, between the cutting off of the ear and the slave girl, he's seen Jesus bound and arrested and going to trial. So that might have had an impact on him as well.
Yeah.
So I think he just got confused and maybe a little scared.
Yeah. And this is a great lesson for people that are discipling other people. When they sense fear or confusion or, pin them in a corner or whatever, you start to do and say silly things. It's like you've lost your mind. I can remember one time when my commander confronted me after 24 hours of being up. Nobody's thinking right if you haven't slept at 20. And man, I lied straight through my teeth. And after a good night's sleep, I said, "What did you do?" I just lied to my commander. And I had to go back and tell him the truth. But it was a great lesson. When people are under duress or they're confused or whatever, don't pin them to the mat.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, and it's a good point that, rest and diet and exercise, that's all part of discipleship too, because
Yeah.
mind, body, and soul are all linked, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what was illegal about Jesus's trial?
A bunch of stuff.
I was going to say a whole lot.
Yeah. So first, it was an unclear charge. They never told Jesus what the charge was. Then they bring him to Annas, who was not the high priest. He was the mob boss. And Annas is questioning him. That's the wrong judge. They should have brought him to Caiaphas. He was the real high priest. Annas was like the high priest emeritus, once a high priest, always a high priest kind of a deal. And then they did not give him any representation, and they didn't call any witnesses on his behalf. And then they had him wanted him to testify against himself. All of that was illegal. That the trial was at night. That shouldn't have happened. It was illegal for the Jews. What they were supposed to do was gather together, have the charges read, have the witnesses testify, and then the Sanhedrin was supposed to break up and go away 2 by 2 and discuss, and then come back and, starting with the youngest, so they wouldn't be influenced by the opinions of the elders, declare what their judgment was, right? None of that happened. So this is a total mock trial from start to finish.
And the only one who recognized it as a kangaroo court was Jesus, because he knew what a kangaroo was. He so he could say, okay, this is a kangaroo court. All right, let's continue to press on here.
All right, so 25 to 27. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself, so they said to him, "You are not one of his disciples, are you?" And he denied it and said, "I am not." One of the slaves of the high priest, being a relative of the one whose ear Peter cut off, so this guy was probably recognizing him. "You just cut off my cousin's ear, Did I not see you in the garden with him?" And Peter then denied it again, and immediately the rooster crowed. So, man, Peter's gone down the rabbit hole here. Do you think it was easier for Peter to deny the second and third time?
I don't have any experience with lying, so this is a guess. Okay. No, I know as a kid, and sometimes as an adult, like I admitted 5 minutes ago, once you tell one lie, it's so easy to tell the second and third. You got to cover your tracks.
Right.
And so they got Peter pinned to the mat. And so what is he going to do? He's going to keep on lying.
Yeah.
So
Well, I can just hear the rationalization, well, I just blew it with a slave girl. So, why not blow it with these adults, these men who are asking me.
yeah, yeah. All
All right.
right.
So let's continue 28 through the end here. Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the praetorium, and it was early, and they themselves did not enter the praetorium so that they would not be defiled, but might eat the Passover. Get the irony there. They're murdering an innocent man, but they don't want to be defiled.
Yeah, yeah.
Therefore, Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" And they answered to him, "If he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him to you." So Pilate said to them, "Take him for yourselves and judge him according to your law." And the Jews said to him, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death," to fulfill the word of Jesus, which he had spoken, signifying by what kind of death he might die. He was about to die. Therefore, Pilate entered again into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate said, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and chief priests delivered you to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm." Therefore Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say correctly that I'm a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no guilt in him. But you have a custom that I release someone for you at the Passover. Do you wish that I release for you the king of the Jews?" So they cried out again, saying, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber.
All right. So what are the charges that they're bringing against Jesus for real?
Yeah, they really, by all the way through the Annas and Caiaphas, they had not really settled on a charge. And when they got to Pilate, he says, "What's the charge?" And they said, "Well, he's a criminal." Yeah. What's his crime? He's a criminal. Okay, there is no charge, right? So they're thinking on their feet, and the first charge was blasphemy. He claims to be a king, the son of God. Uh, Pilate didn't care about that. That's not against Roman law, right? Caesar claimed to be a king too. That wasn't against the law. Or claimed to be a son of God. So he said, "Well, handle that yourselves. That sounds like a religious matter." And so they had to bring the charge up to sedition. He's undermining Caesar. He's no friend. You're no friend of Caesar if you let him off. Then Pilate had to deal with it, right?
Kangaroo court. Yeah, it's terrible because um, I can't say for certain that in all my zeal for God, I wouldn't have done the same thing. So I really don't want to get on my high horse and come off the top rope on the Pharisees because I is one,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. But I'm a good one. A good Pharisee knows he's a bad Pharisee. So anyway,
Well, it's like Paul says that the Jews had a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So why was Pilate trying to avoid this? Why was he trying not to be involved with this?
I think there's a couple of reasons. Pilate had incited riots in Jerusalem previously by bringing the Roman banners and so forth into the temple area, which was, the Jews really objected to, and that caused a riot. There were several times when he didn't govern very well, and he was kind of on thin ice with the Caesar. So he didn't want another incident, right? He just, y'all handle this yourself. Let's not make this a big deal, handle it at the lowest level kind of thing. The
Mm.
other thing was he was a little uneasy. He wasn't quite sure about who Jesus was. In the other gospels, his wife comes to him and says, I had a dream, have nothing to do with this man, right? And so you see him, I think genuinely asking Jesus and genuinely wondering, but ultimately he takes what Jesus says and uses it to mock the Jews. Here's your king,
Mm-hmm.
and has written on the placard, Jesus Christ, the King of the Jews.
Yes.
So he's uneasy politically, and I think he's uneasy spiritually.
Yeah. And just from a moral standpoint, I think he's uneasy. I think he sees right through this facade, and it's like, you guys are playing games and you're using the government to do it,
Yeah, yeah.
And but like you said, he's on thin ice, and so he capitulates. But it's right in step with the prophecy, and that's the amazing part of this. So
Yeah. So part of what he asked Jesus, are you a king? And Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. What does Jesus mean by that?
yeah, I think when you look at Jesus's disciples, they're all thinking worldly power. They're all thinking, kick the Romans out. And Jesus never espouses that. And here is kind of the declaration of his kingdom. Hey, it's not fleshly. I think of Ephesians 6:12, where Paul says, our fight is not against flesh and blood. It's against principalities and princes of the air, evil. All flesh is just POWs in my, some are, have the, I can't remember what the syndrome is where you agree with the enemy. But, after a while, you're in captivity so long, you just start believing the lies. And I think that's where the flesh was. Jesus came to redeem that flesh.
Mm-hmm.
But his fight was against spiritual wickedness,
Yeah,
evil, Satan.
yeah.
So,
Kind of like he's telling Pilate, you have no idea what's really going on here. There are powers way above you and I who are involved in this. I
yeah,
think, though, it's important not to make the mistake that the Gnostics make and say that anything physical is evil,
yeah,
because ultimately Jesus' kingdom will be of this world, right? It's going to be a reformed, renewed world. So he's really saying the source of my authority does not originate with any human, you know.
yeah.
I think that's what he's saying.
Mm.
So he says, I was born to testify to the truth, and everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. Pilate says, what is truth? What's behind Pilate's cynicism there?
Yeah, a bunch of sarcasm, cynicism, and jadedness.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jesus could say the same thing, and the world would say, what is truth? Because people are so jaded. Number one, they don't want to be accountable to anyone. You know, hey, who made you the boss of me? And truth, by its nature, is a boss, by its very nature. Because once you bump into truth and you're wrong, truth is a boss, and you've been called out,
Yeah, yeah.
and people do not like being called out. It started in the garden, and so I think one of the things that contributes to this is, number one, not seeking the truth, And number two, being bombarded with so many half truths that you can't trust anything. Think about fake news today, and
Yeah. Yeah.
how much confusion. People just give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to watch the news. I don't trust the government. I don't blame you. I don't know what the truth is unless I'm reading the Bible,
Right.
and
Right.
I see Jesus. Sorry, I'm preaching. I'm getting on my soapbox.
No, I was going to make that very point that truth is reality from God's perspective. But if you go to any other source but God, you're going to get infinite number of opinions. There's an old saying wherever there are two people, there are three opinions. So it is frustrating, and I'm sure Pilate, if he had ever genuinely sought the truth, was frustrated with the whole process.
Yeah, yeah. Well, head, heart. How does this make us feel?
Uh, for me, it makes me more yielded. If you look at the story, everybody is trying to control, right?
Mm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
Judas was trying to control Jesus. He was trying to provoke him to action. Pilate is trying to control his political destiny. The Jews are trying to control their religious authority. The only one who is in control in this whole thing is Jesus, the victim, Jesus, right? So I like what you said. He's not a victim. He's the only one who is in control, and he was yielded. That's why he was in control. So to me, that's what I want to have that attitude.
Yeah. I have this empathy towards Peter. Every time I read this, I'm like, oh man, Peter, I would have done the same thing. I don't even know if I would have had the guts to jump up there and cut a guy's ear off, But I know, man, I can empathize with Peter, and I'm just like, dude, I get it, you know. You're a strong guy, and you wanted to do the right thing, and you just you were confused. So
Yeah.
anyway,
What's amazing to me though, when you look at this, and we've both seen people resolutely go into combat knowing that they could lose their lives, and they do so for their nation, and and yet you think, surely we would be more resolute for our Savior, and more willing to do that, but you never know, right?
yeah, right. Yeah, the old adage, you don't know how you're going to do until you actually get in the firefight.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. So what are we going to do? Head, heart, hands.
Yeah. For me, and this is from beyond this. I'm preaching John 21. I'm finishing up John this week. And in the end of that chapter is where he tells Peter his destiny. He says, when you were young, you can do whatever you want. When you're old, somebody else is going to have you do something. And then he asks about John. Well, what about him? That's none of your business. You follow me. And to me, it's that yieldedness is, okay, how has God designed me? I need to do that, and really, whether I like it or not, whether I'm bored with it or not, I need to yield to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it goes back to Peter and disciple making, just being patient with people, knowing that I have messed up and people that I'm discipling are going to mess up. Now, not licentiousness, okay? I love what Paul says to the Thessalonian church. Excel still more, keep working at it. But as leaders, Jesus was tremendously patient with those guys, and I need to be patient. So, yeah. What's on tap for next week?
John 19, we're going to actually see Jesus crucified and some of the witnesses to that, and his compassion even from the cross. So we'll go to 19 next week.
All right. All right. It was great being with you. We love you. God bless you. And until next time, keep following Jesus.
Amen.